جيش لا توضع أمامه خطوط حمر.
Good afternoon and thank you for joining us on FutureTV. I'm Linda Tsanim and these are today's top stories. The Lebanese Forces Executive Committee backs the party's leader Samir Jarjar's presidential bid, saying a change is in order to preserve stability in the country. UN Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs Valerie Amos reiterates the UN's commitment to help Lebanon cope with Syrian refugees. And an Associated Press photographer is killed and a reporter wounded in a shooting in Afghanistan. The Lebanese forces have announced that the Christian Party's leader Samir Jarjar will seek the office for presidency as the country gears up for the upcoming elections to replace Michel Sleiman. Following the executive committee meeting, Jarjar's deputy MP Georges Adouane says there was an agreement to back the politicians in his bid to become president based on national principles and the political values of the Lebanese forces and the March 14 alliance. In response to the reporter's questions, Adouane says that Jarjar's candidacy will put an end to the habit of choosing neutral candidates who have no political stance. Adouane added that a dramatic change was necessary to confront dangers jeopardizing the unity of the country. He said that Lebanon is at a sensitive stage at the security and economic levels amid the spread of chaos and the proliferation of illegitimate weapons, which lead to the disintegration of the state. Military prosecutor Judge Saad has charged 2 Lebanese and 6 Syrians in absentia for belonging to the Al-Qaeda-linked Nusra Front. The national news agency says the 8 suspects are accused of plotting terrorist attacks. The charges include arms possession and shooting Lebanese soldiers in the Jabal Mohsen neighborhood of Tripoli. The agency says Saad referred the file of the suspects to the first military examining magistrate, Judge Riyad Abu Ghida. A number of rockets fired from Syria have landed in the Bekaa. The national news agency says 2 rockets landed between the towns of El-Labwe and Nabi Uthman. One of the rockets exploded while the other did not. Prime Minister Tamam Slam has received the UN Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs Valerie Amos at the Grand Serai today. Amos, who has also visited President Michel Sleiman at Baghdad Palace, reiterates the UN's commitment to help Lebanon cope with the growing number of Syrian refugees.
Good morning. I've just had an opportunity to have a meeting with Prime Minister Tamam Salam. We, of course, discussed the overall situation here in Lebanon, the huge support that we as a United Nations community want to give Lebanon. Our thanks to the government and people of Lebanon for welcoming so many Syrian refugees. Yesterday, we registered our millionth refugee. We are very conscious of the huge demands and pressure that this is putting on the Lebanese economy, on areas like health and education. And our job is to support the government and the people, particularly to support host communities that are hosting so many refugees, as well as giving support to the refugees themselves. I'm now going to have a meeting with the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and I also had an opportunity to talk to the President and also to the Minister of Social Affairs.
Syria's army tanks and warplanes have pounded besieged Mleha east of Damascus as it pressed a campaign to take control of the opposition-held town. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says fierce fighting raged on the outskirts of Mleha as rebels tried to defend the town a day after 22 opposition fighters were killed in the army's bombardment. Mleha is strategically located near regime-held Jaramana, which frequently comes under rebel shelling. The army's campaign to crush rebel bastions in the eastern Ghouta area began in March of last year, and its troops blockaded the area completely in October. Hundreds of thousands of civilians are still living in the eastern Ghouta area, suffering from severe food shortages in many towns and villages, as well as bearing the brunt of daily shelling. Elsewhere, fighting resumed in Latakia in western Syria, where rebels launched a major offensive 2 weeks ago against several strategic positions in the heartland of President Bashar al-Assad's clan and his Alawite sect. Coming up next, Michael Schumacher's agent says the Formula One star is showing signs of recovery. That and more after the break. Welcome back. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry says he will evaluate the next steps in the Middle East peace process with President Barack Obama, warning there are limits to Washington's time. The diplomat urged Israeli and Palestinian leaders to prevent the negotiations from collapsing, saying it was regrettable that both sides have taken steps recently that are not helpful in promoting peace and ending the decades-long conflict between the two sides. On Thursday, Israel announced it will not release a fourth batch of Palestinian prisoners because of renewed Palestinian efforts to join international organizations. Israel had promised to free 104 veteran Palestinian prisoners in 4 tranches, and in exchange, Ramallah pledged to freeze all moves to seek membership in UN organizations until this month. But a crisis erupted at the weekend when Israel refused to release the final 26 prisoners, enraging the Palestinians, who responded by resuming their approach to international agencies. A Turkish court has ruled that a blanket ban of social media website YouTube violated human rights and ordered most of the restrictions be lifted. Today's decision comes after a top court ruling this week scrapped a similar ban on microblogging site Twitter. The government blocked access to YouTube, Google's video sharing site, after anonymously leaked audio recordings appeared there, purportedly showing senior officials discussing a possible attack on Syria ahead of an election. Access to Twitter had been similarly barred until the Constitutional Court on Thursday ruled that violated the law. The court in Ankara said the YouTube ban was too broad, and a copy of the court document showed it specifically blocked access to 15 videos instead. Formula One star Michael Schumacher has shown moments of consciousness and awakening more than 3 months after suffering serious head injuries in a skiing accident. This is according to his manager Sabine Kem, who said that Michael was making progress on his way. Schumacher, 45, slammed his head on a rock while skiing off-piste in the French Alps resort of Méribel last December. The most successful Formula One champion of all time has been in a stable but critical condition since then in a hospital in the eastern French city of Grenoble. Doctors started lowering the retired German racing driver's sedation at the end of January to wake him up from an artificial coma. One foreign photographer has been killed and a reporter wounded in a shooting by an Afghan policeman in the country's east a day before presidential elections. Associated Press photographer Anja Niedringhaus, a 48-year-old German national, was killed instantly, according to the news agency, while AP reporter Kathy Gannon, a Canadian, was wounded in today's attack. The agency reported that the two were traveling in a convoy of election workers delivering ballots from the center of Khost city to the outskirts in Tani district. The convoy was protected by the Afghan National Army and Afghan police. They were in their own car with a freelancer and a driver. 2 ships with sophisticated equipment for searching underwater have zeroed in on a remote stretch of the Indian Ocean in a desperate hunt for the missing Malaysia Airlines jet's black boxes, whose batteries will soon run out. The ships with equipment that can hear the black boxes' pings were slowly making their way along a 240-kilometer route that investigators are hoping may be close to the spot Flight 370 entered the water after it vanished on March the 8th en route from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing. The black boxes could provide crucial information about what condition the plane was flying under and any communications or sounds in the cockpit. The head of the joint agency coordinating the search, however, acknowledged that the search area was essentially just a best guess and noted that time was running out for search crews to find the coveted data recorders. And now for news around the world in brief. The U.S. government has created a service similar to Twitter in Cuba in a discreet operation intended to promote democracy on the communist-ruled island, but officials denied that the $1.2 million effort was aimed at fomenting unrest. and said the program was neither secret nor covert under the U.S. government's definitions of those terms. The program was run by the U.S. Agency for International Development, which normally delivers aid to the world's poor, and was discontinued in 2012. Heavy rain and flooding have killed at least 16 people and left over 10,000 homeless in the Solomon Islands capital, Honiara. Officials say another 30 are missing and the death toll is expected to rise. Entire communities were swept away as the city's main river, the Matanikau, burst its banks, bringing down bridges and inundating the downtown area in a disaster said to be one of the worst ever faced by the Pacific nation. The trophy for this year's Football World Cup was unveiled to media in a ceremony in South Korea's capital, Seoul, ahead of the finals in Brazil this summer. Members of FIFA and the Korean Football Federation joined South Korea's team coach Hong Myung-go at the ceremony. Christian Carambeu, a retired French player who won the World Cup in 1998 and now FIFA ambassador, says the trophy will inspire young soccer players. Comedian and veteran late-night television host David Letterman will retire as star of The Late Show on CBS in 2015 when his latest contract expires. His comments came during the taping of his show in New York last night. Letterman, 66, began hosting the show on CBS in August of 1993 after leaving the rival NBC network, where he had hosted the Late Night with David Letterman show for many years.
Earlier today, the man who owns this network, Leslie Moonves, he and I have had a relationship for years and years and years. And we've had this conversation in the past, and we agreed that we would work together on this circumstance and the timing of this circumstance. And I phoned him just before the program, and I said, Leslie, it's been great. You've been great. The network has been great, but I'm retiring.
This is really?
Yep.
This is true. This is, you actually did this?
Yes, I did. Wow.
Well, do I have a minute to call my accountant? Because
I just want to reiterate my thanks and for the support from the network, all of the people who have worked here, all of the people in the theater, all the people on the staff, everybody at home. Thank you very much. And what this means now is that Paul and I can be married. So we don't have the timing of this precisely down. It will be, I think, at least a year or so, but sometime in the not too distant future, 2015, for the love of God. Yeah, in fact, Paul and I will be wrapping things up and taking a hike. Thank you. Thanks to everybody.
Thanks for the cat. Thanks for the cat.
This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our top stories. The Lebanese Forces Executive Committee backs the party's leader Samir Jarja's presidential bid, saying a change is in order to preserve stability in the country. UN Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs Valerie Amos reiterates the UN's commitment to help Lebanon cope with Syrian refugees. Finally, an Associated Press photographer is killed and a reporter wounded in a shooting in Afghanistan. Those are your Friday headlines from us here at Future Television. I'm Linda Tamim, wishing you all a very nice weekend.